It's the isolation rules that make no sense. People can't afford to be isolated for 10 days.
It's time to move on. That's the message from ACT leader David Seymour, who wants to end MIQ, end vaccine mandates and end the traffic light system as we know it. He says New Zealand is at a point where the benefits of the public health measures are outweighed by economic and social damage, and the ACT leader is with us this morning.
Look, throughout this pandemic, ACT has said we're here to make constructive criticisms where necessary and helpful suggestions where possible. We've done 4 comprehensive policy papers filled with proposals throughout it. Move On is the latest one, and it's very simple. It says, look, Omicron is different, it spreads faster, and as we heard from your last guest, it's much milder. So the cost of stopping spread is much higher, and the benefits of reducing cases are much lower. I know we're eager to reduce hospital caseloads. I know that people are scared of the spread, but we've gone through each of the current policies and asked the simple question, do the benefits for reducing spread and hospitalisation exceed the cost? And as you go through them, every business is required to display a QR code and you're legally supposed to scan in. It's not making any difference. We should just dump it. MIQ, we have more cases in New Zealand than just about any other country at the moment, and yet we're trying to lock them out at huge cost to tourism, to business, to separated families. We should just dump it because it's not making a difference. Vaccine mandates, I've been a very strong supporter of vaccination and still am, but at this point we have 96% vaccination rate. The continuing to exclude people from a whole range of aspects of life is going to make very little difference to whether they catch it. It may slightly delay when they catch it, but it's not going to change the overall outcome. And so we have to ask ourselves, why do we keep doing this to ourselves? If it's not making a difference but it is imposing cost, then let's move on from control. Let's take control back of our lives. Let's move on from rules that don't make sense and start balancing some of those other needs that New Zealanders have, which are mounting, so we could move back to talking about things like the cost of living, the difficulty with housing and child poverty, because those things have all mounted up and been ignored in the meantime.
Why don't we just continue a Conservative response for a few more weeks until we're past the surge?
Well, I apologise for the helicopter, which may be making it difficult to hear what I'm saying, but look, it's a good question, Jack. I put the question the other way around. If a measure that we're forced to comply with that adds costs, such as making somebody isolate for 10 days when the infectious period is day 4, 5 and 6, then does it make sense to continue to impose a cost when the benefit is minuscule? So I put it the other way around. Rather than saying, well, we should keep sacrificing, keep allowing the government to control many aspects of our lives for minuscule benefit, well, I think that's the wrong question. I think the government should be justifying the restrictions it puts in place. And I'll give you another one. When we were trying to eliminate COVID-19, restricting large gatherings made sense because one super spreader event could lead to an outbreak and kill the elimination strategy. Well, sadly, the elimination strategy is dead. So is it worth living in a climate of fear, killing hospitality, killing large events, when in reality, at best, it will change the timing of when people catch it, and probably not by very much because people are catching it in such a wide range of settings anyway. I just focus on the outcome. We're going to the same place. Why do we persevere with these costs that are so devastating to so many aspects of people's lives?
Once again, contact tracing is a tool that would assist us to do that, and it would assist businesses to get back to business as quickly as possible.
Well, I think that speaks to a lot of the frustration that people have. If Michael Baker is seriously saying that he's actually planning to use more restrictions and rules after the peak, I mean, people have just been getting used to the idea that we might be able to drop some of the rules and restrictions after the peak, and it's that sense of unending control, COVID before anything else, that I think has got people so frustrated. In terms of what he's actually trying to say, it seems very unlikely that something where, fewer than 2 million scans are being done each day now, even if you scan in, the last 10 people at the venue apparently didn't. So it's not clear how it's actually going to help in any circumstance, let alone afterwards. When it comes to hospitality, I agree with you. It's not so much the 100 size venue limits that have done a lot of damage to events that affect hospitality. Nevertheless, it is that climate of fear from which we need to move on. It's the isolation rules that make no sense. People can't afford to be isolated for 10 days if they become a case or a household contact. What we should do is follow Singapore, who say it's 72 hours, you get a negative test, you're out. And this is again why people find so offensive, that you're asked to spend an additional 6 or 7 days in isolation. You probably don't have it, but you're not allowed to buy a test. You should be able to get them at a supermarket like any other civilised country. And yet we're constantly asked to make sacrifices that won't move the dial in terms of our overall outcomes of getting through this with minimal hospitalisation. And that's why ACT says we should simply move on from rules that don't make sense.